County work session for March 7th, 2023. First on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance with Mr. Creasy and Mr. Murray.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to have a moment of silence, please. Okay, so work session. Any questions on the consent agenda?
Only thing I'd bring up is that we did remove one item that was published. I believe it was number 11 originally. It was number 10 or 11 that was a contract with Solution Tree. So if you notice that online, we removed that because the vendor was no longer available for us. And that's now changed online.
So tomorrow night we'll have the arts program.
Yes, we will have our large arts program tomorrow. So you will see dozens upon dozens of our art students will be here. And so we will have them kind of displaying some of their artwork the way that Dr. Halford, and we've done it the last couple of years, is she will have a slideshow to be able to be viewed as kind of our website so you can see all of those instead of each student trying to hold up what their piece of art was. So one of our best meetings we do all year long.
It is, and I love seeing the artwork. Everybody, the artwork in the central office, there's some outstanding pieces.
And a secret, if you are interested, so Dr. Halford has a, Dr. Chastain shaking her head over here. Dr. Halford has rhyme and a reason to what across each department where she puts different paintings. So as you were looking at different paintings, she tries to come up with a reason of why she put that there. And it's up to us to figure out why she does that each year. So it's an interesting little nuance that she does.
Okay. So, number 9.
So number 9, curriculum and instruction, tab 2, Rutherford County Schools online teaching contract. Curriculum and instruction department's requesting permission to continue the Rutherford County Schools online teaching contract from June 1st to July 21st, 2023. The contract outlines an agreement between Rutherford County Schools and teachers to provide instruction in online courses for the duration of summer school. Teachers will receive a base pay for each course and an additional payment per student in the course each term. A copy of the contract is attached. We started this back this school year. Our board approved it for fall and spring. This took the place of previously, if a student wanted to take an extra course, they had to go through Pearson or our virtual school at $750 per course, and that was not affordable or the instruction we wanted to provide. So these are our in-house teachers doing that.
Any questions? Number 10.
Number 10, Human Resources, tab 3. So under the direct supervision of the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Support Services, the recruitment manager will perform a variety of tasks associated with the recruitment and retainment of employees. The recruitment manager job description has been updated for approval. Just a couple quick changes. One, we are asking to move this from a level 4, is that correct, Dr. Anthony? I think we have it as a administrative hourly position. We're asking to move this to a salaried position because that person doesn't necessarily always work on an hourly basis, especially if they're at conferences or attending those. We also feel like that will help us be able to attract a different level of candidate that may have some background in recruiting, because that is definitely a need for our growing district.
Number 11.
So number 11, legal, tab 4, so policy adoption, second of 2 readings. Policies below are recommended on the second and final reading, and I'll just read the policy number and then just the title since it's a work session. So policy 1.106, Code of Ethics. Policy 2.200, Annual Operating Budget. Policy 3.204, Pandemic Epidemic Emergency Cleaning. Policy 3.2041, Pandemic Epidemic Face Covering Mask Requirement. And again, I say this every time, we're sunsetting those policies. They're not coming back. The fact that I mentioned face covering, I want to make sure we're making sure we sunset those policies. Yep, that got more views than anything we've done in the last 2 months. Policy 3.208, facilities planning. Policy 3.211, energy use and conservation. Policy 3.601, student insurance program. Policy 4.603, promotion and retention. Policy 4.604, credit for prior courses. Policy 4.605, graduation requirements. Policy 5.109, evaluation. Policy 6.300, code of conduct. Policy 6.309, zero tolerance offenses. Policy 6.319, alternative education. And then policy 6.413, prevention and treatment of sports-related concussions. And then we have one new policy, policy 6.604, name, image, and likeness. And this would be the second reading, which would put them into approval.
Number 12.
All right, number 12, we have Fund 177, Capital Projects Budget Amendment, so tab 5. The board has previously already approved this project to go out to bid, and now we're asking for the funding to actually do the project. So this amendment budgets $150,000 from 34,685 committed for capital projects. Christian Elementary School's calling me, so I apologize for that. Guess one of my kids didn't do what they were supposed to today. Oops, is what it is. So I'll talk to one of them this afternoon and see what's going on. Committed for capital projects, fund balance to education capital projects, 91,300, 335 maintenance and repair services buildings to replace the fire alarm system at Rocky Fork Middle School. This project is being pulled from fund balance because it is a new project and an emergency replacement due to the system being struck by lightning. Mr. Lee, anything you want to add to that?
No, sir.
Any questions? Number 13.
All right, number 13, Facilities and Construction, tab 6. So request for Riverdale High Annex bid on Thursday, March 3rd, 2023. Purchasing, engineering, and construction received bids for the site work and construction of the annex for Riverdale High School. All bids have been received, and engineering and construction recommends Robert S. Biskin and Company, base bid plus alternate 1 through 3 for a total bid of $49,605,200. Engineering recommends motion to approve the request and move forward to Health and Ed to request funding in the amount of $56,305,200. You'll see the breakdown: construction, $49,605,200, construction-related contracts, $1 million, fixtures, furniture, and equipment, $2 million, design, $2.2 million, site, $1.5 million, for that total request of $56.3 million.
So we still have one outstanding. We've got
Oakland to Distill, yes. Mr. Lee, do you want to add anything? I think we only received 2 bids, definitely over what we anticipated.
With same 2 bidders we had at Smyrna, same 2 bidders here, and we'll have the same 2 bidders on Oakland next week.
And so what were our original kind of amounts? I know that we were looking construction more towards 35-ish, I believe, and they were 43. It was 43.
Yeah.
And you will see it came in over 49, so.
Not the numbers that I wanted, but we have to do this.
So, Mr. Lee, what do you think, in talking, because I know we do pre-bids, all that, what are some of the reasons for extra costs for this project?
Number one, they're tough projects. They're not easy. Utilities, limited number of subcontractors available that are doing this type of work. Some of the subcontractors that have normally bid have gotten either one or both of these projects, and they're not going to be bidding the next one. But the contractors have a pool that has stepped up, that they feel like they have enough subs to get competitive bids for Oakland. Probably be in the same ballpark.
Now, one of the other things we talked about was that, this is unlike Smyrna. Smyrna's kind of it's a renovation, but it's more of an addition. This is you were going to be moving students around, doing a lot of the work while students are in those areas. So I'm sure that adds an extra cost as well.
It does. The logistics of both of these projects is very difficult. I don't want to say Smyrna's is simple, because it's never simple to add on to a property that's occupied. But because it's in the parking lot on the end, it's a lot easier to isolate your impact on the day-to-day operations. These 2 projects are right in the middle of the campus. And we have students that go back and forth all day long. So there's quite a bit of logistics that has to be worked out on these projects.
And do you think we could still have 2 projects going at the same time? Like construction-wise? Yeah.
You talking about Oakland and Riverdale, both projects going
Now I
on?
was talking about any of them, like Smyrna, Riverdale, Oakland, Riverdale.
The contractors, they wouldn't bid them if they didn't have the
Okay.
resources to do them.
Okay.
So that they're confident they can staff the jobs.
That's what I was concerned with. Okay.
Can you go over a little bit how we advertise the job or put it out for bid?
Our purchasing department, of course, it's online. All of our projects are online under under finance, under accounting. We also, by state law, we publicize in the local paper, which also puts it out for bid. We also have a database that we keep of everybody who's ever bid a project for us like this. Because the general contractors are the ones that actually bid the project. All of the subcontractors actually bid to the subs, to the generals. So we have a database of general contractors and subcontractors that have bid for us over the last 15 to 18 years. We email every one of them the day that it goes out for bid. So if a subcontractor would see it, they would know to contact, as I call them, the usual contractors that bid our work. From time to time, we have contractors from out of state. It's published on Dodge, which is a trade publication it's in the Dodge. It's called the Dodge Room. It's a report where all contractors can go to. It's updated weekly as new projects come out. So we're on the Dodge report. There's actually one out of Knoxville that we also send to. So that's the normal ways that contractors find out about work. The Dodge Room and the plans rooms are the normal processes. We also have the printer that does the printing for the documents, which so many people now are going to digital, but we still have to have paper to do takeoffs with. Though the printer, Lilliet and Rogers in Nashville, they are the only plan room left that prints construction documents, so they also have a database that people look at, and they keep these things published there too. So between the paper and what we do and Dodge and the trade publication and Lilliet and Rogers, that's pretty much got the general contractors covered.
Mr. Tidwell, I'll also add, so I asked our purchasing department for a list. So I'll going right along with what Mr. Lee said. They also send out the ad to all the contractors we have in our vendor file, like he talked about. And then the architects post in these places: the Nashville Contractors Association Incorporated, McGraw-Hill, FW Dodge Corporation, like he talked about, AGC Plan Room, and then Reed Construction Data File. So those are the 4 places that we.
Is there a expiration date, like the bids are open for however many, what's the timeline, the length of people can?
It varies, but all right, so Oakland came out for bid last Friday, and it bids next Thursday. So it's about a 2-week cycle,
Okay,
which is fairly typical. We had a pre-bid today at Oakland. We also have mandatory pre-bids so that we know who the general contractors are. We also make ourselves available, we said Tuesday this time, didn't we? Tuesday at 9 o'clock, any of their subcontractors that want to come look through the building, look at, the electrical contractors want to see the gear and that kind of stuff. We will do that on Tuesday. We did the same thing for Riverdale. We did the same thing for Smyrna. So we had a fairly good turnout at Riverdale, probably 20 to 25 folks that were interested. They were electricians, plumbers, demolition people, concrete people. It was just various. The general contractors go back and contact all their subs and say, hey, if you're going to bid, you have to, here's your chance to get in the building to look around. And that allows us to do it in a organized manner. We don't want people in and out of the schools multiple times during this time frame, so we always set up a time with those GCs. They are there, they know when it is, and it's their responsibility to contact their subs. So we do everything in our power to make sure they know about it, and then make ourselves available and allow them to see the facilities prior to bid day.
so you're saying we have like approximately 25 people that came out to look at the facility?
Yes.
There were electricians and.
Various trades.
Yeah, okay. That's good to know.
think all the builders are downtown Nashville. We had slowed somewhat, but when I was down there last week, there's like 9 or 10 cranes down there.
Well,
again.
if you check with our local surrounding counties, there's a limited number of contractors that actually bid schoolwork. And it's pretty much the same ones here that are bidding in Williamson County, that are bidding in Wilson County, that, you know, the bid around Murray County. It's the same general contractors, and I don't want to say they just specialize, but a vast majority of their work is schoolwork. Yes, sir?
I was going to ask, Trey, could you explain the contract? Is it a hard money contract or a cost-plus type job?
Hard bid, meaning the bid's it. Now, we have had instances in the past called unforeseen conditions. If you'll remember, we had that at Rocky Fork Elementary. The soils, we had to go back and add some money to it, and that was outside the contractor's scope. It was, you know, something that was unforeseen. But for all intents and purposes, in my tenure here, that's the only job that we've had to come back and ask for money for.
So it's very rare, is what you're saying?
It's unusual, yes.
So it's a hard bid, so whatever they say, that's what the job is
We
going to be.
do have some allowances in there because there's some things that we're still working through with the city that we don't know. We've got a very good grasp on it between the engineers and myself. We have put budgets together, and I'll use an example. There's a emergency access road, and there's some sidewalks that the city's asking for at Riverdale and Oakland. And there was not enough time to finish the process with the city and get all these drawings completed. So they're shown in concept. We have estimated a budget for that work, and it is called an allowance, and it's carried inside the project. And then once we get through with all of our city issues, then the contractor will give us a hard number. But we feel like those allowances that we're carrying will be adequate to cover those scopes of work that we don't have what I'm going to call well-defined scope. Those items will be, are identified. There is monetary values assigned to them, and we'll work with the contractors. They'll give us a hard number, and we're fairly confident that we've got enough money there. And I'm hoping that these projects are just like all the ones that we do, that at the end I'm able to do a deductive change order, and there's a little bit of money coming back.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how that played into with the city, with their ask, if it's padded for that to include it. So that's good to know.
We are carrying allowances, yes, ma'am.
That's good. Thank you.
Yep, number 2, anything else about Oakland Riverdale?
I think we got them.
Okay. Number 3, I don't believe we have a CMTA ESPC update yet, or
No,
do
we
you have
don't.
one? Yep, nothing has changed in the last 10 days, I don't believe, since we had a meeting with Michael Smith, and we're still waiting on sample contracts from them. All right, number 4, and before I read the John L. Beatty property, so we have had some discussions around whether we need to do sewer, getting into the whole discussion around using and asking the city to provide sewer or having our own property. We are not asking for approval for the additional 13.3 acres, so we took it out of the bold print, but it is still included in the recommended approval. So I'll ask that you just strike that. So after it says, and 2.29 acres, that additional 13.3 acres subject to funding approval, we're not asking for that. So just remove that, and additional 13.3 acres subject to funding approval. All right, so the John L. Beatty property, now I'm going to turn it over to Trey to go over all of the testing data. Engineering and construction has received all the requested reports for the Beatty property located at the corner of Blackman and Baker. These reports have shown what we would consider to be normal Rutherford County property characteristics. Traffic study has shown normal requested road improvements for turning lanes and vehicular stacking. Soil reports indicate good soils for a private operation salt filtration sewer system. Engineering and construction recommends the purchase of the Beatty property for utilization for 2 schools. The property is under 2 contracts. One contract is for 59.1 acres. The second is for the house and 2.29 acres. The parcel consisting of 59.1 acres is appraised for $4.5 million. The house and surrounding 2.29 acres have appraised for $730,000. Both contracts have been amended to provide for the purchase of the properties at the appraised prices. The purchase will be contingent upon approval of funding by the Rutherford County Commission. And then we have the following motion, again, removing that and additional 13.3 acres. All right, Trey, I'll turn it all over to you for all the testing.
We have basically 11 different documents that are provided in your packet. I'm going to briefly discuss each one. I'm not going to go into all 100 and something pages for certain reports, but I'm going to tell you what these reports say and reference a couple of pages, and then if there's additional questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them. So, John, if you'll pull up the survey, the first thing we have is the survey, which includes, at this point, because we were out there, I went ahead and surveyed the additional 13 acres. All this does is verify meets and bounds, and it determines the actual surveyed area to verify that what the deed book says is there is what's there, because what we've been going off of is county GIS. So to protect us, and typically it's within a couple of tenths, if we think we're buying 60.1, it's either going to be 59.9 or 60.3. It's always very close, but this is something that we always do, is to survey all the property so that we have all the corners and everything is verified. It also identifies any easements. You'll see that there's an easement for Middle Tennessee Electric going to the existing home. We would work with Mr. Reed's office in Middle Tennessee Electric. We'd probably abandon those easements, and then we would provide new easements for whatever our design shows. So that's nothing unusual, but all of that is identified in this survey. Nothing out of the ordinary with it. So that's number one. Next, we have our two appraisals, which you've seen these. This is just all part of the documentations. We have the appraisal 1, which you've seen. We also have appraisal 2 for the two various pieces of property. The first new thing, or second new thing, I guess, because the survey's new. The second new thing is what's called a Phase 1 environmental assessment. This is something that is done to protect us, to make sure that there has been no environmental disasters, there's no Indian burial grounds, there's no toxic waste dumps, all of those kinds of things. In the evaluation in section 7.2, it says no evidence of on-site RECs resulting from conditions on adjoining properties was identified during the course of this Phase 1. It's a lengthy document, but basically the gist of this document is done research. They reach out to the Indian Council, they reach out to TDEC, they reach out to the local fire departments to make sure there's been no fires there where there would have been groundwater intrusion from oil or gas or anything like that. All of those documents are included with this report, and that's basically all it is. It says there's been no environmental issues on this piece of property and that it has not changed. They went back to 1950 with aerial surveys that the GIS and the county has done to verify that this property has not changed, in any shape. In other words, there wasn't a big pond that somebody's come in and filled in, or a ditch that was a stream that somebody's filled in, or something like that. That's their other verification. So that is done by CEC. They're a licensed engineer. That's kind of what they specialize in, is environmental investigation. So that is the Phase 1 environmental. Any questions on it?
So basically, we're clear on that. Everything came back good.
Yes, sir. No problems. The next report we have is the Jurisdictional Waters Report provided by Griggs and Maloney. They basically look at all the soils maps. They actually go out and take soil samples, do testing of the soils. They are not testing for constructability. They are testing for what we call hydraulic soils, meaning they're wet plastic that could be identifiers of wetlands or swamps. In their executive summary, 1.1, third paragraph, based on the review of the aforementioned map sources, no hydraulic soil Wetland areas are indicated to be present within the subject property. Soil examined at several areas with the subject property did not feature characteristics that are typical of hydric soils. The observed soils were consistent throughout the site and featured a similar matrix color. The other thing that we do that just, as I call it, the extra nail in the board is we send that report to the Army Corps of Engineers to get their blessing and certify that they agree with it and that the Army Corps of Engineers has no jurisdiction over this piece of property. The Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdictions over what they call navigatable streams. That definition is up to interpretation. Some of the streams that they have jurisdiction over, I don't know what they're navigating it with, other than maybe some child's toy boats, but they still have authority over these streams and creeks. This is just a second certification for me. It's not required that we do so, but I do it as a second. And we received our letter from, and it's not a part of what we got, I just received the letter from the Corps today. And they agree that they have no jurisdiction over anything on this property or any property surrounding it.
And just for ease of use, because this is a 638-page board meeting with all these tests, so this one starts on page 366. So just for reference to help with ease of looking at it, if you need to go back and look. So Trey, when you go to a report, I'll just interrupt real quick and tell them what page it starts on.
Page
This is page 366 out of 638.
So, just really quickly, so the wetland report, say that again about there is wetlands, but it's not what, there's no wetlands.
There are no wetlands
Okay,
here.
great, awesome.
The next item is what we call the will serve letter from Consolidated Utility District. This is our water supply to verify that we have enough water flow. I will note something to you because they have it in bold, just so that you understand what this is. The fire department requirement submitted not via the Rutherford County Fire Rescue Department was 500 GPM at 20 PSI. The fire sprinkler requirement submitted not for the fire sprinkler contractor design was 500 GPM at 40 PSI, and an irrigation requirement of 100 GPM was assumed. CUD's requirement for a will serve letter for most developers is you have to go to the fire department and tell them exactly what your development is going to be, and then the fire department will tell you what your GPMs are. They also will typically flow fire hydrants for this area. We have a good working relationship with Consolidated Utility. We've built a number of schools. This 500 GPM and 40 PSI was what was utilized for our initial design at Plainview, which is a 3-school campus, which includes a high school.
This is on page 403.
So this is probably a little overboard. And what they're saying is prior to us building, they will require us to hire our engineer to do a design for these buildings and consult with the Rutherford County Fire Department and come back with our actual designed flow and GPM. It will be less than this. But to give us an indication of do they have enough water, they will answer us. They feel confident they have enough water, but their official process is that we will eventually have to hire, which we will when we go to build, our engineer will go through the county's process and it will go back to them and they'll actually determine the pipe size based on what those actual flows are. They also have some conversation in here. Fire department demands are based on the fire hydrant. We don't have a fire hydrant yet. We don't know what those flows are going to be because we haven't begun the design of the building. What they're telling us is they have adequate water to meet what I've requested, which is 500 gallons per minute at 40 PSI. We will be less than that, but to officially be able to tap in and get an official design from them, we'll have to go through their normal steps. But this is an indication that we got enough water. If they couldn't meet this, I would maybe be concerned. But they can meet this. The next item is a letter from the city of Murfreesboro where we did a will serve letter to the city requesting sewer service. At this point in time, I still do not know whether the city is going to allow us to have sewer or not.
And let me hit on that. So Ms. Sharp and I met with Mayor McFarland a couple of weeks ago. So the way this letter was originally written, it was requesting that we ask for annexation for the city to be considered. That is not something I'm comfortable recommending to the board because I'm not sure that that would also make it through county commission approval. And so we have made that point clear. And so Mayor McFarland is working on a new way for us to, I believe in one of their codes, and I don't want to get into the weeds with that, but that allows a government entity not to have to be annexed, which is how we have done it in the past. And so I'm waiting for receipt of that letter, which is part of why you guys don't, we are waiting on that additional 13.3 acres. We're waiting for that to make some headway. But it was a great meeting. Yep, you may see it again, but we want to see if we can make some headway with the city first.
Next, we have the traffic impact study,
407.
which is a really long document with a lot of information there. Basically, what they say is that the impact, they've studied this impact through the 2028 development using historical TDOT data, which is typical. They do see that we will provide a moderate impact, moderate meaning normal for a project of this size, impact on the local traffic. They have provided, John, if you'll pull up 42. There you go, scroll down a little bit. So, what you see here is the Baker Road portion. These are the recommended, so we would have, based on our current design, we would have an in and an out. They're both ends, but we would have 2 points of entrance on Baker Road and 2 points of entrance on Blackman Road. That would be so that the schools would be separate. Now, we are planning to tie those together with our preliminary design so that you can access both schools from one section. I would not recommend at this time that we build all 4 entrances at once with just building with the one school. Whichever school we build, we would build those 2 entrances so we would have an in and out just like we do at a typical school, not build the road that ties the 2 together, and then when we build the second school, we would bring the other 2 entrances back. So what this is an indication of, this is nothing unusual. We have done the same thing at every school that we have built thus far. We build stacking and turning lanes into and out of the school. So this is their recommendation for the Baker Road side. You'll see that there's, on one of them, there's 1 in and 2 outs, and the other one, there's 2 in and 1 out. And what that's an indication of is the 2 lanes in would be our primary entrance. We would designate that as an entrance, even though you can go out, and the other side would be in. And typically what we do is bring buses in one side and cars in the other. They cross in traffic, and then the buses leave the entrance that the cars are coming out. The cars are leaving that the buses come in.
And I want to hit on that real quick. So this is a conversation that we've had with the city several times, that this is one of their major thoroughfares that they're looking for in part of their 10, 20-year plan. and we are definitely interested in being a partner in that process, but we are not interested in developing it for them. We will do our partner as a school system, but we are not interested in developing it so that there can be an interchange in the future. And so that's
The thing that we would probably do, and based on our current design, it's not an issue at all, because our buildings are set back far enough. Blackman Road is in their 2040 major thoroughfare plan, is a major 4-lane, 5-lane road. We would not be building anything of that nature. We would be building something similar to this, which would be considered a 3-lane because of the turning lane. There it is over on the other side. Very much similar to what's there. But what we would do is allow additional easement space so that when they came through and widened the road, any utilities that we put in, water, sewer, anything like that, we would put them far enough back that they wouldn't have to remove. In other words, they wouldn't come in 5 years and move something we just put in. So we would back things up enough. They would tell us, we will work with them to make sure we give them enough easement space to build the roads and to adequately move. I've already met with Middle Tennessee Electric. There's some poles now that I think they're outside their easement. I had our surveyor pick up those poles from the center line. I've got another meeting with them. If they are not in their easements, Middle Tennessee Electric will be responsible for moving the poles at their own cost. And we have a really good relationship with them as it is, so it's a very working relationship. So it was not going to be, so we would move any poles that we had to move outside the city's future plans, so that when the city comes through, they would not have to relocate those poles. We've done that numerous times in the past. When we built the Rocky Fork campuses, the city of Smyrna had plans to widen Enon Springs. They were nowhere near ready to start. Dr. Sullivan got the
That was a great
one-lane
amount
road.
of mud. It was great. Loved it. Absolutely amazing
But
experience.
we knew where the road was going to widen back to, so when we put in our storm pipe, we put it in the location for them. We had to put one in. We weren't putting anything extra, but by working with them, we saved them an expense of having to move something we had put in a year and a half earlier. So those are the kind of things we will work with the city on. We're not going to build a 5-lane road if that's what they indicate, but we will work with them to make sure that we keep our amenities and those kind of things back far enough so that they don't have to relocate them when they come through. So that's the basics of it. A lot of the traffic study talks about stacking on our property. We have moved these buildings back a little bit further from the road than what we normally do to try and get some additional vehicular traffic off of these roads onto our campuses. We've also looked at, when the future rear road is built, ways to bring our traffic in slightly different so that we can get additional cars.
How many acres do you estimate we purchased just for the stacking portion? Because it's a big portion for us.
An average elementary school, I use 25 acres. I would say the roadways probably take up 6 to 8 acres. If you linear, I'm having trouble tonight, linear, speaking, you know, that you would just look at the road, not for a big block, but I'd say probably 6 to 8 acres for an elementary. And a middle school, our older roadway designs, probably about the same, but in this design, they're going to be a little more.
Okay.
Can I ask, I'm not familiar with this area, and I haven't been out to that property. So Baker Road, is it a 2-lane road?
Yes, both of them are.
Okay, so I know like at Rock Springs Elementary, they have issues with traffic backing up down that 2-lane road on Waldron Road
Yes.
at dismissal time and drop-off time. Do we anticipate something like that here, or because it's newer, have you built in more stacking room than like Rock Springs would have?
We have built in additional stacking,
Okay,
but to tell you cars will not back on the road, we would have to buy another 50 acres to get enough roadway to get all of the cars that we see at some schools. The Blackman schools would be an example, Stewart's Creek. There's just, we are taking steps to do a better job to get a large number more vehicles off the road. Based on the number of students and the number of parents that start lining up 4 hours before school dismisses, especially at our elementaries, it would be, we couldn't build enough stacking.
No, I get that. I just was
But-
wondering if we had actually done something different.
Yes,
So I
we have.
appreciate that very much.
We have added quite a bit of additional road space. We've actually backed the buildings up. They're a good distance back off the road. Normally, we're right on top of the road. We're much further back with both of these designs.
Yeah, this road construction looks a little bit like what's in Blackman right now.
If you went
Well,
to
Blackman
just
Middle and
about
the
any
high
of our schools, yes, you would see something similar. It's at Rock Vale, it's in smaller areas, and let me say this. Turning lanes and the stackability and number of cars, when Las Casas, and I'm going to use that as an example, when Las Casas School was built, I'm going to dare say in that right turning lane coming from Las Casas going toward Milton, you can't get 15 cars in that turning lane. But was the design when that school was built. Unfortunately, and I'm going to use the term problem, that a lot of our older schools have is those schools were not designed for the vehicular traffic that we have today. We have much more, and we've added a lot. If you go when we built Rockville Middle, those turning lanes that are there are about half what they are today. When we built the high school, we more than doubled them to try and get more vehicular traffic off. We added an additional third road. There's actually 3 points of access because there's 2 schools, the middle school and the high school. There's things that as we have changed, and that's why we do the traffic studies. We hire the people that do that sort of thing to tell us, give us recommendations. One of the things that the city asked for, and the county asked for it as well, there's a new subdivision on the interstate side of Blackman Road. It's not even started yet. But they gave us their drawings to where the new main road for that subdivision is going to come out. And we have shifted our design to line up, and there it is right there, that road that John's showing you there. That road to the 24 side is not there yet, and that subdivision has not even started. But it's planned and it's going through their process, and one of the things they asked us was offset intersections that are close together are not good. You want as many T intersections as you can get. So they gave us their data, and we aligned, which meant we had to shift our layout to meet them so that there is a T intersection there. So there's a lot of work that we've gone over where we have talked to the county developers, the county planning folks, and those kind of, so that's all taken into account in this report and things that they've asked us to look at and things that they've asked us to do. But there's nothing unusual here. There's an extra, I'm going to call it an extra lane there. It's fairly short. If you were coming from Smyrna going toward Burnt Knob, there's actually a left turn lane, a straight lane, and a right turn lane. In the past, our traffic studies have not had that straight through lane. They've only had a right turn and a left turn. Traffic studies have changed. Vehicular traffic has changed. This is something that, because of the vehicular data, they've asked for this time. I think it's a good idea. It really works until you got to stop traffic and let the people coming from Burnt Knob turn left to go in. Doesn't help that straight through lane at that time. You've still got to stop the traffic for a few minutes. But it's something that will help when they're letting the traffic turn in that's coming from Smyrna going toward Burnt Knob. It'll speed that process up. And the length of those lanes is not determined by myself. It's determined by the county and what TDOT's regulations are and what these folks say. And that's what we take into account. So other than a little bit, it's nothing out of the ordinary that we haven't seen. It's a little longer than what we've seen in the past, but there again, Rockville Middle to Rockville High, TDOT's regulations changed twice. So
Mr. Lee, the car riders versus bus riders, are you seeing a change in that?
it depends on the demographic, but the answer is yes. In the areas where the demographic is a little more affluent, our car ridership is probably 60% and our bus is 30 to 40. If the demographic is the opposite, it does the opposite. It's 65 to 70% bus rider and 25 to 30% car rider. So the demographic does have an effect on it, but both of them have increased in the last, really since COVID. We have more parents even that have determined they can get by with less, so one parent or the other is either working at night and they've chosen to drive their children to school. And a lot of grandparents are now picking their grandchildren up from school, and they like to line up at 1 o'clock. I don't say anything to them. I've had a number of city, and this is not unique to Murfreesboro. I've met with Brian Hercules numerous times in Smyrna. I've met with the mayor of Laverne. I've met with Mr. Salyers, who's over their codes department. I've met with Ram Balachandra, who's the traffic guy for the city of Murfreesboro, and none of us have a really good solution. They all think we need to solve it by telling the parents they can't start parking at 1 o'clock. And I've told them I will allow them to come over there and stand beside me as we try and run those grandparents off. I have had no takers to this point.
No takers, imagine.
And I will tell you, in week 5 of being in this position, I very quickly learned that Thurman Francis and David Erie are going to be an issue on the first day of school. And I very quickly learned that was just a day I'm going to get yelled at by the city.
Yes, the choice
at and
schools,
move on.
because we don't provide transportation, are horrendous the first few days. So that's the traffic study. If you have some additional questions, I'll be glad to answer those. Let me know. The next thing that we have to look at is our GEO report. We're going to look at page 3, which is our executive should be. And I've got my stuff next up. Is the executive summary. Basically, this is another 100-page report, and this kind of breaks it down into a one-page summary for it.
Page 530, if you're on the whole, 530.
Basically, I'll read a couple of quick things for you. The geotechnical study was performed for the school campus in Murfreesboro. 66 borings were drilled to depths of 5 to 18 feet. Within or near the footprints of the proposed improvements, the following geotechnical considerations were identified. The borings encountered typically stiff to firmer residual clay to the exploration depths of 5 to 18 feet. Some weak upper soils were encountered at normally shallow, less than 3 feet, but occasionally deeper, intervals of 25 of 62 of sample borings. The site is considered generally suitable for the proposed project, provided the site and building pads are prepared in accordance with the recommendations of this report, using techniques and construction methods appropriate for the geology of the host soils. Put it in layman's terms. We have a little bit of fatty soil, clay, which is typical for Rutherford County. It's weathered limestone. These soft soils that are indicated are also not unusual because this is farmland. It has been dissed and farmed as far back as I know. That's not unusual. We call it topsoil. It's residual. The ground is broken open a couple of times a year. A lot of folks now are doing no-till drilling. But still, in the past, it's farmland that has the top 12 to 24 inches has been broke open numerous times. When that soil is continuously broke open year after year, it does not have time to compact like the soils that are underneath it. If this was virgin land that had never been farmed and or as wooded, we would not expect to see the depths of weak soils that we see in farmland areas. The only thing that I'm going to call not the norm for the property that we buy, typically the property that we have bought has had rock that is much higher. This rock is 5 to 18 feet down. It's not a bad thing, just kind of unusual. I kind of like having rock. I can do a lot with rock. I can take soils that are bad and take them out. We mine a lot of our rock on site. When we built Rockville, we got a rock quarry. At most of our schools, we take our detention ponds, the big ponds that when it rains a lot, that holds a lot of water, we shoot those, blast those to mine the rock that's there to utilize for roads and building pads and those kind of things. It's just a construction practice. I don't know that there's that many farms, land left in Rutherford County that you could go 15 feet and not hit rock. It's not a bad thing. I just like having rock just because it's a personal thing, because it's a good, stable building material. The fatty soils are not anything unusual for this area either, because we do have so much limestone that has weathered over the years. Weathered limestone turns to clay. Depending upon which type of limestone you had, and there's 4 or 5 different kinds of limestone in Rutherford County. If you ride down the interstate, you see the small layers. You see the rock that looks kind of layered. That's my favorite. It shoots beautifully. Where you say the big pieces of limestone, they don't shoot real well. That's not my friend. It takes a lot of extra work. You'll typically see those big boulders that shoot. They'll have them over on the side, and you'll see a machine that pecks and makes a lot of noise. HORAM, they break those big rocks into small rocks so that we can use them. This report, typical stuff. If we do shot rock, they require anything from powder to 12 inches in size. You put it in various lifts, you roll it. Depending upon the piece of equipment that you use determines how many passes you make. All of those types of things are in this report. They recommend hiring a geo person to observe when the building pads and roads are being done. We've done that on every job since I've been here. It's a safety thing for us. It covers us to make sure that not only the contractor does it right, but that we're getting what we pay for. So we hire a geotechnical firm to watch the contractor build the pads and the roads on every project. Other than the rock being a little deeper than what we would normally see, or a project that is all rock with no dirt anywhere, which we've had a couple of those where we've had to buy dirt to put in the islands to plant our trees, where it was all rock. Other than that, it's typical Rutherford County things. There is a couple of mentions, and John, if you will pull up those. The first one, and I've got to find it.
You can see we don't even purchase the full version of Adobe in our county, so we try to save money everywhere we can. Thanks, Mr. Runyon. I'm going to blame you. I'm not really going to blame you. It just seemed appropriate.
All right, if you look at the top left where it says Blackman Road, says P55. There's a little clouded arrow next to it with an arrow. Come down a little bit, John. That says a location of twin open throats. Everybody sinkholes, and they have a connection. We call them karst features in the construction industry. Twin open throats means there's a small depression in that area that is open. Water goes there naturally, and then it seeps down in the ground. They are nothing of any size, but we would dig those out to make sure nothing's there. And then with a geo guy there, and based on normal practice in this area, we feel like 10 to 15 feet, if they are anything, we'll know in the first 5 to 7 feet that we can, what we call normal construction practice, choke off that karst feature, meaning we'll just fix it where water doesn't go in it anymore. We have had something similar, some much larger, on just about every piece of property that we've bought. This is a typical Rutherford County thing. The only people that have it worse are the people in Bowling Green. And those poor souls, they've got some big ones. But most of ours are fairly small. It's nothing that we haven't addressed before, but because our engineers saw them, they note them. They also noted one other, and it's in the location of the additional 13 acres that we're talking about. There again, it's a small depression, nothing major. But basically what these 3 pages, I wanted to pull these up so that you would know where, if you read the report, where these 2 things that they've identified are. And then you can actually, there's a page for each, there's 65 or 6 pages that there's a detailed drawing for each one of those borings. And it gives you basically a look down in the soil at what the soil does every time it changes. They do a split spoon, which goes down to refusal, which means it hits rock. And then they drilled a few holes into rock because I requested it. It tells us what kind of rock we're dealing with, whether it's that boulder rock or it's the layered rock.
We didn't
It
find oil,
determines how
did
we
we?
shoot it.
We didn't find oil, did we?
We did not.
I was looking for a new revenue stream, always
No,
thinking.
no. If you will also look, both of these designs are shown with the
Fine gold.
expandable designs where we can add on to them, both projects. So that is the GEO report. And then the last thing you have, and I did have a couple of questions on this. What is the purple and the red? This is the additional 13 acres that we are looking at if we need to do our own sewer system, that we would request to buy this additional 13 acres in conjunction with a portion of the top left. John, move your mouse to your left.
And that's
No,
page
no, not that
629.
far.
629.
No, go up the hair. In this general area, which is where we show detention pond and parking lot, where the little hand is and where this purple and red is, would be the locations of our sand filtration system. That's the 2 different soils that are in that area, and that is an indication of the purple is the better soil. The red we could still utilize, but we don't get the same absorption rate. So for 2 schools, we would need that and a little bit of acreage that we're already purchasing, and that would where we would put our drip fields for our standalone sewer system. I show you those it's from the GIS. The firm that we employed actually went out and did some soil testings to verify, because these are maps that are done by the U.S. Geological Society that the county also uses. Anybody can pull this map up on the county GIS, soils map. But to verify that the soils were there and you still have to go out, even though it says it's got a certain absorption rate, there's a rate, and it's about 25 points. They have to determine where it is in that 25 points to determine whether it's on the high side of good or on the low side of good. So they made those determinations, and we did pick another section where we feel like on the property that we already have, talking about purchase, that we would be okay for our own system if that was the case. Now, I wanted to show you that, to show you that we've made preparation to look at the additional soils, that if we need to do our own sewer system, it's there. We have it, and if we don't need to buy this, and we would tie on to the city.
So the 13.3 acres for the septic is all predicative from what the city will say, correct? Because we're waiting for them to see if they allow us to use their sewer.
That is correct.
So since these 13 acres are not included, worst case scenario, we have to get these additional acres. Will we have to go through the whole process again?
No, we would approach, Mr. Reed would approach the owner. We've already talked to the owner. He would like to keep that, but if we need it to do the deal, he's willing to sell it to us at the same price.
At the same price, but we will still have to go through the process of going to the county commissioner.
We'll take it all at one time.
Okay.
We won't go twice. That's why, that leads me into my next, that's not part of this. Mr. Reed and I talked today, our inspection period ends the 14th,
Okay.
which is next week. We're not going to have county approval, even though we have most of the money to move the funds. We've still got to go to Health and Ed, Budget, and the full commission. We're not going to get there by next Tuesday. I'm recommending we approach the owner to extend the inspection period 60 days. And that will give us time to go through the process at the county and get all the approvals to be able to write him a check. It will also give us a little bit of time for the city to make up their mind what they're going to do. If they give us the sewer, we don't need it. If they don't make it, we buy the 13. It would give us time to amend the number. And my recommendation is you all approve, if you so choose, is to approve the basic project and the 61 acres tomorrow night, if that's your choice. And then we come back in a week or two when we know for sure we approve the 13, but we take them to the county all at the same time. We don't go twice.
Okay.
It'll just elongate the process and make it more difficult.
And I'll bring that, because that brings, so there's oftentimes questions, so what is the director of schools' recommendation? My recommendation is to purchase this property because we need a school in that area. When you see things that are on here, just for clarification, if you see something on here, like earlier, we talked about Human Resources tab 3, and it said recommended approval, that is myself and the staff's recommendation. So if there's ever questions about it, that's what our recommendation is.
So just to be clear in understanding what this is gonna look like. So right now, the recommendation is to go ahead and move forward with the project with the 60-something acres.
61.
Yeah, and then extend the contract by 60 days so that Jeffrey can go back to the owner and extend it so that we have time to figure out, for the city to give us their final decision of what is gonna happen with the sewer or whether we need to go with the septic. And if we've gotta go to the septic, then we have to go with that 13.3 acres, but the owner's aware of that, so that's good. And then we'll have to roll that as part of the roll that as part of the contractual agreement with the owner, and also what will have to go before county commissioner when we decide to ask for the funding. It'll include everything, correct?
And I will tell you, my recommendation is to get an answer from the city within the next 2 weeks, because if we don't get within the next 2 weeks, then I'm back to May's County Commission meeting. So I need to hit Health and Ed the 28th of March.
20th of March.
Or otherwise, we are hitting middle of May's County Commission meeting.
So we're hoping to go by, well, hold on, what day do you think we're gonna, okay, I'm so confused, I got a little confused there. So March 28th, we're gonna go to the.
That is when Health and Ed is done.
Health and Ed.
Yes, I believe that's the Monday. Does the Monday sound right, March 28th?
And we will know by then about the city?
I'll have a recommendation for you the week before that on the 24th at our March meeting.
Okay,
Yeah,
That's a Tuesday, and that would be correct.
23rd. March 23rd is when I will be asking you guys, so I don't have a whole lot of time, so it's really,
tight,
yeah.
okay.
So do we need to amend this to state that we're asking to move into an extension of the contract?
Mr. Reed, you want to give us some guidance on that?
Kind of sounds like that's what we're actually doing, is asking for an extension on the inspection period.
You can make the motion just to request an extension of the inspection period by 60 days, which is something we would have to do because we need additional time for it. So this motion also recommends going ahead and proceeding with the purchase of the property. If the board wants to do that, the board can choose to go and proceed with the purchase of the property, but you do want to have that additional 60 days in the inspection period to get county commission approval, because if the board votes to go ahead and proceed with the purchase of the property, it's still going to be contingent on approval by the county commission.
Right. So is the logical thing to just do the extension right now, and then when we get the answers on the sewer and all of that stuff, like Mr. Lee suggested, then go to the county commission with all of the information at one time?
If we have time and the timetable allows us to do that, yes.
Yeah, I will reach out to Mayor McFarland in the city, and if we don't have an answer within the next 10 days, then my recommendation will be just to move forward with the purchase of 13 acres.
Wait, say that again? You're gonna go to the city?
I'll reach out to the city, Trey and I will reach out to the city, because we've had a meeting with the mayor, we've also had a meeting with some of the city administrative staff, and if we can come up with an agreeable portion then I'm gonna ask to have that within hopefully the next 2 weeks, because they want answers too. They've got planning they need to be able to make forward and make decisions on. And if we don't have an answer, an agreeable answer within the next 10 days, 2 weeks before our next board meeting, then my recommendation will be just go ahead and purchase the additional 13 so we can move.
Okay, so then when will that, if the motion is changed to the extension of 60 days, when will we go back to actually purchase, make the motion to purchase if it's split up?
Next week, or in 2 weeks.
And it wouldn't be a special call meeting? Will it be a regular
We'd be
meeting?
able to hit our normal meeting date. Yep.
Okay.
If we do end up purchasing, or the board decides to move forward to pick up this extra 13 acres, if we can't get something worked out with the city, which, would seem like would be the better option, what other additional costs are there other than the land purchase? Like to build the system out?
To build a sewer system is not much different than what it would cost us to do a pump station and tie into the city sewer. They're fairly, based on historical projects, they're within $100,000. They're going to be around $1 million each.
Yeah,
The
there's not
sewer's about $1
substantial
million.
difference between the two, other than
There's not a whole lot of difference cost-wise. The typical big difference is whether there's a TDOT road that we have to cross under, which there's not, it's a county road. Typically, there's some easements involved that we would have to buy. Fortunately, it's 2 pretty good developments, and the city's already got some easements down through there, but Mr. Reed and I would have to go through the process to buy a couple of easements probably, but there's not that many property owners between the tie-in point and where we would cross. So there again, not a whole lot of difference between the 2 different systems. Operationally, once it's up and running, if it's our system, we pay CUD on all of our existing systems to help us operate them. There's a monthly fee like a sewer bill. If we tie into the city, we're paying a sewer bill. So there's the step system, the septic system usually is a little cheaper on a monthly basis, but you're still paying a fee both ways.
So I guess the recommendation then would be for us to try to extend our 60-day window and then.
Correct, with the idea that we would come back in 2 weeks and take up whether to proceed with the purchase of the property or not, based on what we hear from the city on sewer access to the property.
The additional 13.3 acres.
Yes, correct.
So Jennifer, I'll work with you tomorrow morning to change the motion. That's the purpose of a work session, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Mr. Lee, thank you. That was a very extensive report, and that's what we need is to have that thorough information. I appreciate you because they're.
Reads deeper and has a question, just give me a call, I'll be glad to answer it.
Yes, so those are all the inspections?
That's it.
Okay, so I want to go over them. So we did the phase 1 environmental, right?
We did a survey and appraisal for each piece of property. We did a phase 1 environmental assessment. We did a jurisdictional waters report. We did a CUD will serve letter, a city of Murfreesboro sewer response letter. We did a traffic impact study. We did a geotechnical report. And we also did the preliminary soils report for a septic system.
Okay, well, because I had those listed before, I just want to check off the list. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, number 5, Rockville High Baseball Barn. Rockville administration is requesting to allow baseball to purchase a 12-by-20 storage building to be located near the baseball dugout. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and recommends approval at no cost to the board.
Any questions? Wonder how much we spend on outposts.
A lot.
A lot.
All right, number 6, Laverne High Library request. Principal Dr. Theowana Hatchett has received a donation of library book shelving units from the Ingram Company. Dr. Hatchett has requested assistance from maintenance to transport from the current location and delivered to Laverne High School, along with removal of the old units from the library. Engineering Construction has reviewed the request and recommends approval by the board. The shelving units are to be donated by the Ingram Company and relocated by Rutherford County School staff. Anything you want to add to that? I mean, that's an awesome donation because that's
It is,
expensive.
yeah.
And appreciate maintenance helping
Yeah.
facilitate this, because if they didn't, there was some small things that they could move, but the rest of it, they didn't have the capabilities of moving.
So,
How did this come about? Did we reach out to them? They reach out to us? How did-
Ingram reached out to Dr. Hatchett to see if there was any interest by the school, if they could use them. There was it's pretty nice stuff. But they had it in like one of their display areas where they were changing out their displays and they thought the school could use it.
So this
They
is
reached out to her.
going to the library to replace the ones that they're,
It's not a complete replacement, but for whatever they get, we're going to remove an old one.
okay. Very nice.
And Laverne's always had a good relationship with Ingram, being close to that location. Yeah.
Ingram's great. They used to have the Boy Scouts sell, and they sold the books by the inch, like a quarter.
Need more of this.
Yes.
Need more of
course,
this.
Yes. And Ingram is in Laverne, so it'd be great if continue that relationship with that school.
All right, number 7, I'm going to read it. Mr. Reed, will you come up and give some background on this one? Because this was before most of I know my time as director and before some of our board members as well. So this is 3.76 acres Rock Springs Elementary parcel property. Scott Butler, a local home builder, requested the school system to sell a parcel consisting of approximately 3.7 acres at Rock Springs Elementary School. Title to the parcel is held by the Rutherford County Board of Education. The prior Board of Education voted to sell the property, and the property was advertised for public bids through govdeals.com. The highest bidder was Scott Butler, who bid $346,000. The property was advertised for sale subject to reservations of drainage and utility easements needed to serve the school. The sale of the property was advertised to be contingent upon final approval by the board. That's why it's coming back today. The proceeds of the sale can be reserved for the use for future capital projects of the school system, such as future schools or school additions. The board needs to determine whether it wishes to proceed with the sale of the property to Scott Butler for $346,000. So I've talked to several people about this. It is not a unanimous decision on whether or not county commission likes us selling some of this land, because you get into the argument of, is this the school systems, even though it's deeded to Rutherford County Schools, or did the county commission provide it? We are in pretty good shape knowing that this money would go right back into us purchasing some of our stuff. So that's kind of been the caveat and why it's worded that way. Mr. Reed, do you want to provide any background on this, the timing? I mean, it's been a while.
The prior board considered this because the builder came to the prior board a couple of years ago now, wanting to buy some property at Rock Springs Elementary School, thinking it was excess property that was not needed for the school. So at that time, staff here looked at it, and I think the staff actually concluded we really don't need it for the school there. We may have some drainage easements and things like that are necessary for the school that could run across this property that we would reserve and maintain if their property is sold. But there was really no opposition from staff here at the central office about selling this additional 3.7 acres to this additional builder. I think there's some drainage issues out in the area, and this particular builder is having some issues with drainage on some of the properties that he has already built for some houses, and he thinks this additional acreage will allow him to build a detention area to help keep some of the water in that area and store it there and solve some of the drainage issues that he's having with respect to his property across the road. That also would be done in a way that would not hurt the school property and maybe even accept some water from the school property as well. So I think that was the driving impetus for this request. After staff looked at it with the prior board voted to go ahead and proceed with the possible sale of this 3.7 acres. And at that time, we discussed how best to go about it. Under state law, we have to put it out for public bid. So we did that through governmentdeals.com, which is a website which you go on and there's active bidding on. So especially as you see some of these live auction type things where you have some bidder make a bid at this price, someone can respond to it. And in this case, there were multiple bids for this property. In the end, the guy who actually initially proposed buying the property from the school board was the winning bidder on this. So the bid was $346,000. On top of that, Scott Butler would have to pay, there's an auction commission fee to the governmentdeals.com website. That will be something that the builder would be obligated to pay as well. And so this board here needs to determine whether it wants to proceed with selling the 3.76 acres or not to Scott Butler. We have his highest bid now for $346,000, which is a pretty fair price for 3.76 acres. But the proposed motion here, if the board is inclined to do it, is to go ahead and close on the sale of the 3.76 acres for the $346,000. subject to the Board of Education reserving easements for drainage and utilities that are needed to serve the school site, with buyer paying the auction premium and all the costs for the closing. So that is the proposed motion if the board is inclined to sell it. There has been some discussion whether whether the county commission is agreeable to us selling this or not. I don't really know. I think there's a mix of opinions on that. I know there are some county commissioners probably not in favor of us selling this property. So that's something just you have to weigh in your decision whether you want to sell it or not. But this is something that's been out there for a while, and the board just needs to make a decision whether or not we want to proceed with this sale or not for the 3.76 acres. So that is, and this property was deeded to the Board of Education. So if you look at the deed, it was property that was deeded to the Board of Education, held by the board. And certainly you can reserve the funds from this to be used for new capital improvements for the school. So if you do sell this, you could take the $346,000 and then use that and apply it towards one of these new additions we're doing, or maybe one of the new schools we're building on some future school site as well.
And that is my recommendation. So I don't think when you're dealing with something like this, it's not something we've necessarily done a lot in the past, but this is us looking at a different way for revenue. And so regardless of us having full support, we always want to have as much support as we can. This is a way for us to look at removing a revenue issue from our county commission and us looking at that. So my recommendation is to move forward with it.
You said something about the seller's cost. I missed that.
The governmentdeals.com charges a buyer's premium, much as you go to auction. Some of the auction companies charges a buyer's premium on top of what the winning bid is. And governmentdeals.com is 12.5%. So that's just a fee that goes to the web company who handles administrates the sale online. So that would be something that Scott Butler would have to pay in addition to the $346,000.
Oh, so he will cover those costs.
He would cover those costs.
And same thing as closing costs?
Yes, he would be required to pay the closing cost on it.
I would hope that the county commission could see, this is almost $350,000 that we're recycling.
We're putting right back into our capital projects that we're not having to go to massive with. So I would hope they would see it that way. And it's not a lot of acreage, it's 3.7 acres. So it is a very good bid.
I do have one concern. You said you think that he's potentially looking at it for a, retention pond?
I think maybe not all of it, but I think there's a portion of it he would be looking at to put some sort of retention pond, yes.
My concern with that would just be, I know there's already a pond in the front of Rock Springs, mosquito issues, and whether or not we would have any kind of...
The pond in the front is natural. It was there when the school was built, so it would not be the same type of pond that they would be looking to build. It would be one that would have water in it when it rains, and then it goes away. We have ponds, it may actually help. We have ponds on all of our property.
We had a severe issue.
Whatever he does with that property, if that is what he decides to do, will require TDEC approval. It'll have to go to the state, same process we go through. So as long as it's approved by the state, if he was to buy it, I would say as long as TDEC approves it, I would be okay with it, personally.
Is there an inspection period, or is the builder going to do any inspections or anything?
There's no inspection period. The auction was just an auction online.
Oh, it's an auction. Oh.
Yeah, so it was an auction online. He is the winning bidder, and the contingency on the auction was it coming back to the board and for this board to approve the sale.
Oh, okay, I didn't pick up that it was an auction online. Okay, so to put it in perspective, roughly the $346,000, that will be equal to about $93,000 per acre for those for the 3 point.
I haven't done the math, but yeah, I mean, you're
3.7. I mean, it's estimate. I didn't do exact.
Yeah, right.
So it's not exact number, but that's around that ballpark of how much we'll be selling per acre.
correct.
How much did we purchase it originally, do you know?
I don't recall.
And several years ago.
Several years.
Yeah. A lot cheaper than that.
So we're definitely making more money, some,
Right.
It's a win-win situation I see here for both us and the builders.
Yeah.
Well, the only hesitancy I had when it first came out, you never know in the future, when we buy school land, the school system here is going to be here for many hundreds of years after we're all living today. And you just don't know what future land use needs you may have for a school. So even though you may not need it today, you might need it 10 years from now or 20 years from now or 100 years from now. So, but with respect to this particular 3.76 acres, staff here does not feel like we ever would have a need for that 3.76 acres for anything. And given the fact we have no need for it, I mean, it's may not be a need to retain this.
And this was done a couple of years ago, is that what you said?
Yes.
Do you still feel that way, Trey? Just no real purpose for it?
This
Generally
property's got a pretty good slope to it, and if we could have utilized it for a playground or something like that, we already would have. It's basically a buffer right now between us and the neighborhood. It's a section, but it's not,
It's like a
I don't think it would be something that we could utilize based on the topography.
Thank you.
So that's the matter. It'll be coming to you tomorrow night for your consideration.
Okay. So number 14, we don't have any board motions. Financial report, just we have our board retreat to discuss our financial standing and looking at our upcoming priorities. That is Thursday and Friday. So that is our financial report.
insurance.
Anything insurance? Okay. You will be seeing a resolution in the next couple weeks to look at us with some of our ancillary products and that type of stuff. So we'll give you a heads up on that, but that will be coming in the next couple weeks. Director's update, we had our student conference on public education today. It is hosted by the Tennessee School Board Association. So I got to serve as a group leader with 14 students today, which is an absolute amazing experience. It's kids from all the way across the state of Tennessee, and I was lucky enough to have one student from Rutherford County, but we had 14 or 15, I don't remember how many we had, 14 students from Rutherford County participating, and they go through a mock superintendent search, a mock board motion, mock approval, and then they go through a debate. And so it was pretty awesome. Got to see kids participate, got to see somebody have the mic cut off. It was an awesome, interesting day. But
It was a fiery debate.
It was great.
Ms. Rosales?
Yes, so everyone has a presentation deck that I went Monday to present to our representatives at the Capitol, and at the time it was to address the third grade literacy and retention law, because there are several bills that were presented to this General Assembly, and the plan was for them to tackle those bills tonight, but we got an email that meeting has been postponed to the following week, March 14th. So basically, if you go through it, I just gave our representatives, if you go to page 7, you will look at some data, some numbers of estimations of what the law will potentially impact for this year using last year's 2022 TCAP ELA results. So if you look at the top number, 43%, 1,348 third grade students who potentially score in the below and approaching combined category, and that does scrub off the exemptions of the ESL students and students with disabilities. The bottom two numbers takes a little bit step further and removes the approaching category and just looks specifically on the below. And if you take the exceptions, you're looking at 407 third grade students that could potentially score in the below category with scrubbing those exemptions. This number reflects the current enrollment number of this year. So if you go to page 8, you will see that just really emphasizing that 1,348 students could be potentially retained. That's equivalent to 43% of our enrollment for third grade. If you look at page 9, the third bullet, it looks at the approaching category with the kids scrubbed with exemptions. You're looking at 940 third grade students that could potentially be retained for third grade. So that's a lot to digest and to think about. The good news, as we know, the law does give options for students. They can either go to summer camp, or they have the opportunity to go and be promoted to 4th grade and then have a tutor. But essentially, those are the numbers that we're working with. But again, there are estimations. They're not real numbers yet until the students take the TCAP. So that has to be stated. And then the page 10 on your slide, I just basically gave the actual numbers of the TCAP results of 2022 of what will the law be, what will be the application for last year in 2022 had the law been applied. That will be 1,271 students that could potentially be retained that score in the approaching and below category. And then if you go in page 11, that's really what the heart of it all is, because it really talks about what bills we support and why we are supporting that. And so I gave, based upon some recommendation with the instruction department, we had a meeting a while ago, which Dr. Chastain sat in that, so did Dr. Sullivan and others in that department, and we kind of talked about these things, and it was to broaden the scope of data points, not just to rely on the TCAP, ELA, but to include universal screeners and other data assessments, make changes to the appeal process, because right now there's just not a whole lot of guidance for that section. Also to look into detecting the issue earlier than waiting till 3rd grade. So that was included. In page 12, the slide that gives other things that we had, that came out of that meeting with the staff to really stress and encourage that these test results will be provided earlier before the year is over, so that parents and the staff can make, LEAs can make decisions before the summer. And then also some retest specifics, because there's just not a whole lot of information on that other than that it's available online and that, that you can take it. So then the pages 12 and 14 just goes over those bills that we talked about, if you want to look at it in more depth. And then the last page just really emphasizes why we are advocating for the approaching category to be something that we allow kids to make decisions, but not just using one particular a standardized test. Thank you, Dr. Chastain, for your help in providing these numbers, because it was very helpful for me to go there yesterday and really talk to them and give them perspective of what this looks like in regards to numbers and reasons why. So that was very, very helpful. So I really appreciate your work on that and helping me understand that and be able to conceptualize all of this and put it here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then I will be meeting with the senators tomorrow and going over that as well. So that's for you guys to have. If you want to take it home and have a reading it over the summer or as a reading program, go for it.
I do have one question. Do we have a fiscal impact for this bill as it is written? Do we know, did they have a cost
So
associated?
there is a bill right now. That's a good question, and I will look into further of that. But there is a bill right now that is trying to add more support, tutoring, not just for 3rd grade, but also expanding it from K through, I think, 9th. And the fiscal impact is about $25 million in there. And so I will think that will be tacked onto this as well. So yes, there is a fiscal impact. I don't know exactly, but I do know there's another bill that deals with that, and that is the fiscal impact for that. So.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. That was a good report. General discussion, I've got our Title I spring meetings that are coming up. I have all except one Title I school, so I would appreciate, especially those new school board members who have never been to a Title I meeting, if they would just pick one and go to it. We can coordinate that if you want to, because there's a lot of other things that are going on. But those are foundational information that you will really enjoy and get a lot of information from. We'll get to see Mr. Goulian, and he's phenomenal. Y'all get to see him actually in work instead of just back in the central office. So that's all I have. Anybody have anything else?
Ned, we also have an additional Title I school probably joining our family for this coming school year, so you guys will see Whitworth Buchanan more than likely joining as a Title I school for next year.
And currently, that's up to the principal if they join or not.
It's actually a school vote, so school vote, then they decide whether or not they want to be school-based or direct serve, or if they want to be a complete school-wide. And so for a county, anybody over 40%, federal, anybody over 40% is eligible for Title I status. We as a county use 60% as our threshold because that allows us to serve more strategically our district as a whole and provide true resources to schools that are the most at risk, because just about all of our schools could fall within that 40% threshold. And then you're splitting that money about what does a school do with $6,000? Not a whole lot.
Yeah, I think 6,000 is not a lot. And Laverne High School, Dr. Hatchett, they just voted last year, so this will be their second year as a Title I. So we've got 14, 15? Okay. So if anybody wants to go to those, the calendar has been sent out. I'd appreciate if you would attend at least one of those. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion for.
Move to approve.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, Mr. Ruth.